Good evening and a warm welcome to you all to Teaching Through Conversation, the 10th episode, as we continue with the topic of grief and loss, something that has an impact on each one of us, that continues to impact us profoundly as people as we continue to experience loss, which result in the process of grieving. And with me I have Reverend Molo as we continue this conversation, as you help guide Muruti in terms of how should one go through or navigate this grieving process, and how to also remain faithful in this process of loss and grieving, something perhaps that you had to deal with in your ministry as well as you have personal experience. But then something that comes to mind is that often we use the words of David when we go into people's homes and we remind them of the God who is close to the brokenhearted. So in your experience, why do you think those words, those David's words, hold such significant relevance in us today as we continue to experience loss and go through grieving?
Good evening, everybody. Again, thanks, Mfundisi. Part of the journey of grieving, as we said last time, is the truth of disconnection and disruption. And it creates a brokenness that comes from loving, that comes from connection. And then when we go through that moment, there are many things you begin to ask, because that which makes sense, that which is life, is disrupted. It's almost like part of you is kind of torn. And when you go through that moment, one of the things that happens is a sense of loneliness, is a sense of loss of meaning, is a sense of loss of connection. So you almost are hanging around. You almost feel empty. You almost feel like, how can life make sense? And as we said last time, the depth of grieving is a reflection in many ways of the history that you have with the person or thing, but also the love and the depth that you have. Sometimes that is also indicative of your own sense of meaning of life. And therefore, it's not only the physical person who's gone or the thing that you've lost, it's your own sense of perception and understanding of life. So when you feel like that, you are wanting something or somebody to help you stabilize yourself, to help you find a footing that allows you to say to yourself, although it doesn't make sense now, if I hold on, it can make sense. And therefore, when that moment comes, especially if you're a person of faith, there's a deep sense of even questioning God's love and presence. And therefore, when the words come from David that God is close to the brokenhearted, the word that you reference, it's a reminder to the person not to allow to be too dizzy, not to allow themselves to lose some foundation. It's almost inviting them in the whirlwind of loss. You're inviting them to say, look for an anchor. And for us, that anchor is God. And if you believe in God and you believe in God's love, the proximity of God is a source of comfort. It's a sense that says, even though I've lost so much, even though I've lost so deeply, the source of life, the one who is the beginning and the end, is close enough for me not to be too overwhelmed by the darkness and by the loneliness. So that's an invitation really to say to somebody, look for an anchor. And we provide that anchor as God. Nearness, remember, nearness reflects care. Nearness reflects accessibility. Nearness reflects the ability to lean on. So when we say he's near to those who are brokenhearted, we are simply saying your brokenheartedness is something of attention to God. God is giving attention to you. God is aware that you're brokenhearted. It's almost like when we hear those words of Moses, and we never go there. But if you go back to the story, the invitation for Moses to be asked to be part of God's liberation is premised on something. And that thing is what? God's nearness to the brokenhearted. Because the message from God is simply this: I've heard the cry of my people.
Yes.
I've seen their misery.
Now,
And therefore, I have brought myself near to them. And I'm asking you then to go down to Pharaoh. So all of that then is this kind of sense that says to all of us, in our brokenness, we need to have confidence in life, to be reconnected with the things that comes and give stability to life. And therefore those words we give that.
and something that I want to believe is difficult, not easy. And I want to believe that many struggle with that reality. They know that God is close to the brokenhearted, but then in their brokenness, or in our brokenness, in that moment of grief, one struggles to sense God's presence. One gets to question, God, where are you at this time? So what would be your advice for people who are struggling to just see and feel God's hand working and, helping them along this difficult and unbearable journey?
It's nearness, the reference that you're referencing. We almost those of us who share those words, we almost share those words with impatience.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Simply by saying it, we expect people to be okay.
Okay.
You've lost so much.
Could it be as well that the one who these words are said to, they think we expect them to be okay immediately?
Probably, but let me tell you why I say we use them as a magic wand. When we've said them, we ourselves, we expect the struggle to stop.
Yeah.
We expect the people to, because we've said it, because we've said, God is near to the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
Wipe your tears.
Yes.
And after saying that, we're just waiting, all we're doing, we're waiting for you to wipe your tears. And rather than dealing with the reality, nearness, it's a strange little thing. Nearness does not take away the brokenheartedness.
Goodness.
It's near. God is near, so that in that journey of through brokenheartedness, you don't go alone.
So we're actually helping them find, or for the hope to be restored, even in the midst of grief. So we're saying both can coexist.
Actually, they do.
Yes.
All we offer at that time is accompaniment.
Yes.
We are saying to this person, we don't know how long this will take for you. These tears might flow even tomorrow. But we want you to know, your tears don't chase God away. Your pain don't chase God away. He is near. So as you journey in your brokenheartedness, there's somebody next to you.
Yeah.
And when you go through something painful, you want your friend to be there.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you won't cry. Sometimes you even say to your friend, again, I don't want to take this thing too light, but when you've lost your first boyfriend, when you were at the age you were at, you sit with your friend. You are angry sometimes you're crying.
Yeah.
So the conversation goes up and down. One conversation could, and then you tell the story, you cry. Then the next time you say, one trial, I would say, banana giman. Because the brokenheartedness is a journey. So your friend does not take that away automatically. All she does is to walk with you. And therefore, when we say God is near to the brokenhearted, we're saying to people, literally speaking, we're saying just stretch your hand. God is there, stretch your hand. And in many ways, what that means, therefore, is, as we said last time, we legitimize your conversation with God. We allow you to talk to God.
Yes.
Even if when you say,
state that you are in.
Exactly. And that allows you then in that conversation to be truthful and honest with God. Just like with your friends sometimes, when they want to raise the matter again, you're almost like, keep it to work again, because you're moving up and down. And that's the journey then of loss. So when we say God is near to the brokenhearted, we are saying to the person, as you cry, know there's God near you. Cry so that God can be with you. When you're angry, be angry, knowing that God is here with you. When you feel lonely, remember that there's God who's nearby. Because all of these things of loss are part of that. So when I say nearness does not take away the pain, it allows you to journey through the pain with the knowledge that God is present, that God is with us. And if you know that truth, then you journey with more patience and you journey with more hope. You don't journey hopelessly, you don't journey defeated, struggling, wounded, falling sometimes, but always with the belief there is somebody to pick me up, and that person is God.
I like
and
that.
That's what we do.
I like that you journey with hope and you journey with that faith.
Yes.
You know that the journey is long. You know that the finishing line, you can't see it yet, but you know it's somewhere. Therefore, that pushes you. So that I want to believe makes, even though it's still difficult, it's still unbearable, but then you know that when you go through this, in your tears, in your brokenness, in your doubts, in your questioning, God is very near. How is that different, Reverend Molo, to people who are grieving without hope, without faith?
Two things I want to say then, Murat. The first thing is, I don't want us to idealize hope as if hope does not verge on the side of darkness and hopelessness.
Okay.
Let me tell you what I mean by that. Hope does not mean you feel light. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're like, oh, I know tomorrow will be
Definitely.
right. Hope is that ability to enter into deep moments of darkness. Deep moments of darkness. And as you go through that moments of darkness, you know how dark it is. You know how dark it is. And you stumble in that moment of darkness. You fall on you and you fall down. And something in you says, this won't be the end.
One day. Yeah.
This won't be the end.
Resurrection, it's certain.
So, in that space when I talk of real hope, I'm talking of that hope that knows despair, that knows how it is to enter into that deep space where nothing seems to make sense. But deep down something says, this can't be the end. This won't be the end. And in those moments then, you reconnect with your imagination of God. You reconnect. You even sharpen your own sense of who God is. Your presumptions about God are bent by this darkness, so that your purity of understanding of God emerges. I don't know we ever spend time in really understanding Scripture, because some of the great scriptures are born in catastrophe.
Exactly.
They are born in the moments of darkness, in the moments of deep hopelessness. And therefore, when we talk of hope, we are not talking of a nice feeling.
Yes.
We're not talking of somebody who's on a high. We are not talking of somebody who almost kind of infused themselves with what you call this, what is this thing, this fizzy drink?
Energy drink.
Yes, what is it called?
Red Bull.
Red Bull. Hope is not about you taking Red Bull, not you being tired, and just taking Red Bull and you're waking up and you feel like, I can fly now.
And I'm sure that Red Bull does not even work, by the way.
So hope is this deep struggle with this deep pain, with this deep sense of emptiness, and yet you don't give in to that emptiness. As powerful as it is, that's what hope is. What happens then when we become hopeless? We go into cynicism.
Okay.
We give into meaninglessness. So when you don't have hope, when pain comes, you do not have a sense of meaning for life. And therefore, either you take the indifferent view that says, kibuti, and then you just want to move as fast as you can, or you take the view that simply says, maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe I need to stay here. So the difference between, and let me say this, there are cynical people who claim to be Christian, and they use the Bible to hide their cynicism. So when you get into that point of being hopeless, literally speaking, circumstances overcome you, darkness overcome you, and it's prolonged. It devours your soul. You get de-energized. You have no new dreams. You have no new possibilities. Ultimately, you lose meaning.
Definitely. And
that's a challenge.
That's exactly how I understand it as well. That perhaps I have not been there, I would not know people who end up killing themselves because they've experienced this loss and they are undergoing this grief, and then they get into that space of darkness and they don't get in there with hope. And as you said, that it's not a superficial word, hope. It's being intentional, being aware, even though you are immersed in darkness, that I'm in this space right now, and you do not rush yourself to come out. You understand that this time is necessary for you, but you don't go in alone. So I want to believe those who grieve without hope, therefore that's the reason they find themselves in that space and they never come out, because there were no intentions, perhaps, I don't know if that's the right word, to come out, or they did not have the strength to come out, because without hope there can't be strength.
I was saying, I always try to make sure that we do not, there's no rationality around grief. You are, nobody can say to you when you lose this
is how
this
they prescribe.
So I can tell you this, nobody intends to be hopeless. Nobody. Sometimes when you live with, there is loss that happens, and it finds you in a very emotionally sound place. I don't want to say strong, but it's a sound place. Let's give some example. You lose your father, your mother is still around. The transference of pain and hopelessness is transformed by her presence.
Yeah.
Because you can transfer that, and you can almost say to yourself, at least I've got my mom. And then that allows you then to grapple with this pain with the strength of knowing that she is there. But if the next month you lose the mom, next month you lose your husband, the other month you lose your child, there is a deep sense of pain there that is not rational. And therefore, I say to people, part of the truth about grief is that there is no rationality about it. Because part of grief, for example, part of grief might be that I'm still angry with the person. Part of the grief might be that I feel like I failed this person. Part of the grief might be that I don't think I had time to spend with them. Should have told them more that I love them. So there are many things that form part of that whole thing that's called grief. And therefore, sometimes people enter into that space, first not because there's no plan to.
Yes.
Nobody plans to say, my mom's going to die now, so what am I
This
doing?
is how I'm going to feel.
So they enter in that space. Secondly, sometimes people enter that space with platitudes, as we spent the last time. I've lost my mom. Oh, I remember there's a hymn that says, "Apho bachuchiswa khona, umanabo wena." Oh, I remember there's something said, "Shine less candlelight, candlelight." You know that hymn. There is that one when I said like in English.
Okay.
So you enter there, and because you think your bag is full of all these things that the church has given you, so you enter like you say, okay, the Lord is my shepherd. So I'm just going to go there and find the scripture. And I'm going to read that scripture and everything. And people, literally speaking, enter into that space. Because we have been created, we are forming an aspiration for spiritual super beings. And therefore people get into there. But sometimes the pain and the tragedy and the catastrophe is so sustaining itself that it outlasts your bag of tricks. Yeah. And therefore, because it allows your bag of tricks, because you were depending on this bag of tricks, when they don't seem to be working anymore, you then get lost. And that's when hopelessness comes. Because then you start saying to yourself, even this God doesn't seem to care. Because you've gone to your bag of tricks, yes, and you pulled out the tricks that we gave you. And therefore, the darkness of the lost simply overpowers you because it's sustained. It just stays with you. It drags you. And sometimes you come to church, you want to feel as high as you can. And as they sing in the church, you want to sing as loud as you can. And sometimes you even go stand up in Khona and you pull out your money and you say, I want to thank God because I was yesterday, and then you put your Khona money there, and all of us think we're going to do the thing the right way. Yet in the loneliness of your space,
hence you need to feel patient with yourself. You need to be patient with yourself.
And
because those moments are allowed.
Yes.
That you can be in a space where you are surrounded by people and you feel good.
Yes.
It's like there's some sort of healing.
Yes.
But when you are alone in your space, then you find yourself, you are back. You've taken actually 10 steps back. Yes. It's okay.
Yes, and I'm also saying something deeper from this. I'm saying that sometimes you will yourself into hell.
Yes.
You almost say to yourself, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
I should be happy. I should be grateful.
Yeah.
And sometimes church people, I'm hard on church people, but sometimes church people have this misguided views of how to deal with grief. My mother is 66, 70, whatever year she is. I lose her. And you come and say to me, you are lucky. Because others don't know their mothers. Yeah. So you should not be crying this much because you at least spend time with them. And I normally say to people, do you know why I'm crying?
Exactly.
I'm crying precisely because I spent this time, much of time with her. If she disappeared on me, I will not be crying now. I will not be feeling this pain. So all of those things form part of this need for us then in our own spirituality to learn that. And I'm going to use a phrase that is Teresa of Aquila, she uses it. We need to anticipate the dark night of the soul. And realize that in the dark night of the soul, life persists. Yes. Life persists. I think I might have said this in this church, but I'm going to say it here. We grew up without electricity, some of us. So when it gets dark at night, we sometimes get the impression that life doesn't continue. But if you listen very carefully, in the noise of the animals of the night, those that we are afraid of sometimes, life continues. So darkness is not the end of life. In many cases, is a regeneration of life. But when you go through that moment of darkness, there's no rationalization like that.
Certainly.
It's a journey that needs to be engaged with stubborn hope that simply says, there is something more than this that I'm going through. And I normally say to people, sometimes when you go through these moments of darkness, I probably said this before, if I repeat it, you'll forgive me. Don't look for the moonlight. Don't look for the sunshine. Just look for one star. One glimmer that says to you, light is possible. And sometimes when we then journey with people who go through grief, we make them impatient with themselves, as we said before. But in this instance, what I'm talking about is that there's a tiredness of being in grief.
For those who are supporting.
No.
Those.
We can come to that.
Okay.
Even for you who's grieving.
Okay.
To be in grief is tiring.
I can imagine. I've been grieving my sister. I mean, she passed on 14 years ago. And it was her birthday on the 18th. And as I was posting her and I'm writing this caption, remembering her, and I'm like, I'm about to write that I'm no longer crying. And that's when the tears fell. And I rephrased it. I said, I'm not crying as much as before. And my kids actually noticed it. They said, normally they know on the 18th of October when they come into my room, I'm playing music and I'm sobbing. This was different. And I'll tell you again that I went home this past weekend and I said with my friends who know me with my sister, they know the kind of relationship we had. They know me with my father. My father was their father. So I'm sitting with them for the first time having this conversation. I'm myself, I'm not a minister. You know, they're talking about my father. And I found myself emotional, crying. And I'm like, I'm not crying for the loss of my father, but I'm crying for the loss of bond, you know, that we spoke about last time. Not necessarily that he's no longer there, but then the physical touch, the conversation, the calls in the morning on Sunday, wishing me well, you know, when before I serve. And also perhaps the ability to be myself for once, that I'm not a minister, I'm with my peers.
Yes. I'm going to come back to that moment. I just want to make sure that this one we don't lose for the people. Pisa to be in grief. I can tell you this. Grief starts today, tomorrow you want to be happy. Misery is a burden to carry. What's it again? Bakeza chisbati, hujiwa. Hujiwa, how to know you've reached the top. It's tiring because the ideal for us is happiness. The ideal for us is joy. The ideal for us is being energized. So the longer you are in that space, so it just tires you. It just and sometimes you're like, I don't even want to talk. And therefore, and I'm making this point to say to everybody that grief is not something that we simply could run into and say, I want to be here and I want to stay here for as long as I can. It is a journey that speaks to the soul in ways that take a lot out of us. And because of that, we then want to will ourselves into happiness. That's why we are like, oh, and then you want to change the mood. We want to create spaces where now all of a sudden we are not out of the mood. And I'm saying that could be a coping mechanism, which is fine. But the solution is to continue then to say, how do I engage this grief in an honest, deep, searching way? Remember the last time we spoke, we said, you must also ask yourself, what is it that you are grieving for? What is it that you think you have lost? Because if you ask that question, you might come to the conclusion that I've lost whatever I think I've lost in a spiritual form rather than substance.
Yes.
And how then you deal with that in that journey. So part of that thing then is to say, in the tiredness of the journey, you know that thing when you went for a run.
Yes.
And you look you gotta still far. And the guy can I give you a lift so that I can quickly take you to where you need to be. Sometimes in grief, therefore, because you are tired of it,
Yes.
we will ourselves, we almost force ourselves into a state of happiness, into a state of kind of saying, I'm okay. I'm okay. And sometimes we protest when people ask how we are. Because we're tired of feeling like that. And our journey, therefore, is to know that we are tired. And begin to ask yourself how we re-energize ourselves. And if you remember what I talked about last time is, find those things in life that remind you of the beauty of life. Find those little things. So that the tiredness of the journey is mitigated by the memories that you create in the now for that which is beautiful. So part of that is that, and therefore, crying is quite a strange little thing. Why we cry sometimes? There is crying because you miss somebody.
Yes.
And therefore I miss somebody, and they might be alive actually. And then they might be in America, they might be there, but you miss them and you cry. Because there's an intensity of moment that you feel. And that intensity says, if he was here, she was here, this or that, this or that. And but the truth is sometimes I want to be nice here. We sometimes over-idealize the ones who have passed on. What do I mean? They become bigger than life. Even if they were present, they might have ignored you. When you wanted this, they might have said to you, I'm too busy for you. Whatever they said. Now they are gone. We have this idea that you would have dropped everything and you would have come and be here, and I will not be feeling like this. You forget the moments of disappointment because you idealize them so much. Loss creates a super being rather than the being you lived with. And sometimes we need to learn how to make sure that we do not create this father who would have made sure that I'm sure I don't want to go too far with this matter. When you say he would have called every day before you go to pray.
No, I said some Sundays.
I thought you said you call every Sunday. I thought you said you call every Sunday.
And believe you, I'm glad. No, I can take it.
Yes.
I'm big enough to take it. And I said to my friends, there are a lot of things that I feel my father, could have done better.
Yes.
But then I'm like, my father was a present father.
Yes.
He was there,
Yes.
even present
Yes.
with all my kids'
Yes.
birth, there as a father.
Yes.
And he was there during all my graduations. He was just a present father. He was already planning to be there for my ordination. He has invited his cousins already. So those are the kind of things that I choose, and I'm sure many people, I choose to remember. And I said with my sister, when I do not have money, because she worked for F&B, she would just check my bank account and then I would just see money coming in.
Yes.
Not every time.
And that's my point. This is my point. And I understand it.
Yeah.
My point is, because of the loss, we can exaggerate.
Yes.
Because of the loss, we create this perfect picture. And because we create this perfect picture, the loss then is overpowering.
Goodness.
And therefore, we are not able to deal with the frailty of this person. We're not able to say to ourselves, maybe 3 times she did that. There might have been a day, I'm not saying that's the case, there might have been a day where you needed the money desperately.
Yes.
And all she could say to you, sorry, my sister,
Yeah.
I can actually help you. But because of the loss, that part of the memory is gone. And therefore we create this ever presence, this overpowering presence. And therefore the loss then gets exaggerated. And therefore the pain itself it gets exaggerated. And because it's exaggerated, it overpowers. And because we're not dealing with this person as a human being now. You are dealing with this person now as this big thing. You know that thing when we were young men, we used to say, yo, have you ever gotten a girlfriend whose boyfriend has died?
What happens?
You can't completely move.
With a dead person?
Yeah, you can't compete. You can, I will move.
Yeah. That person's forever good.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. When I say
The week when he was nowhere to be found, it's forgotten.
And therefore, part of that's why I asked the question, do you know what you have lost?
Goodness.
So that you give perspective. Because all grief and pain
What
is
have
lost.
I lost? Goodness.
Yes. And part of that is giving perspective to the pain. It helps you to connect in the positive. It makes you realize that physicality is not a definition of your relationship with this person.
Because many a times we've been with life went on without these people's physical presence in our lives.
Exactly. And then because death robs us of that possibility of meeting, we then get to this point where I say to married couples when I do counseling, one of the delusions of marriage is this idea we are together 24/7.
Yeah.
That's a delusion because if we count the day, if you sleep for 8 hours, you take 8 hours of the day, then you are asleep. Yes, you're in the same bed, but the truth is you're not conscious as well.
Yes.
Then you take the other 7-8 days of work. So immediately 16 hours are gone.
Yes.
And then you come back, the person is busy with that, busy with that, busy with that. So the delusion of 24 hours creates the sense that we are, the proximity creates the sense that we've been 24/7. And in reality we are not. And therefore, the other part of your 24-hour day is filled with other things. It is filled with your work. It is filled with your friends.
With your own activities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when death comes,
it's like I was with you for 24 hours. Wow.
And then now all of a sudden work doesn't make sense.
Something that used to bring me joy. And like you said, you need to revisit things.
Exactly.
Wow.
Your quiet time on your own becomes a burden. Because you're beginning to think to yourself, ooh, if I gave him that hour yesterday, if I gave him that hour last month, I would be happier now.
I like what you're bringing, Reverend Molo, because in our culture, Mama Joy, I always think that actually grieving is prolonged because of culture. Like we said, if you see that you know yourself and you can see that this thing, I'm deep into it, you try to find yourself out, you try to get yourself out. And part of the things that can help you to get out is to come to church, is to go back to work, is to connect with your friends. But then culture will tell you, especially as a woman, that you need to be, after losing a spouse, you have to be in your house for a certain period. You have to wear certain clothes that segregate you from people. What is your take on that?
I've got 2 responses to that. The first response I have is, all societies, whatever societies you live in, always live in the danger of taking a certain stance that brushes away nuances. What do I mean by that? Even coming to church, coming to church in many cases doesn't translate into growth spiritually. But because we say everybody must come to church, we then think if you're in church, you're growing spiritually. Yet in truth, some people are not growing. The nuance that says, what is your individual path to knowing God, is brushed out by the communal response of what it means. So all societies have that.
Yeah.
And therefore, even in the African culture, whatever issue you want to bring, there's always the temptation to brush away nuance, individuality, in the overgeneralization of what needs to be done. So I take the critique that indeed there is a problem there. But the other thing that I want to raise is there is something about this African culture that in its depth we miss when we interpret it in simple observation. I agree with you. Nobody should be wearing something for 6 months. I agree with you there. But there's something else that I've noticed here. That legitimizes your grief. In the African culture.
But now I'm being, I have to bring gender into it.
No, yes, even for men. I mean,
why does it happen only?
No, not even for men. Men would cut something in their hair, whatever. There are things that they do. Obviously, the structure, the patriarchal structure is evident there. But the point I'm trying to get to today is, what then happens is, it almost says to you, you've got the freedom to grieve. We know you are grieving. As I said, the excesses are things that we, yes, we know. As a community, we say, you are grieving.
Yeah.
You are going through something deep. We will give you the space. Now, 6 months might not be the right time.
The time frame that's what I'm questioning.
It could be 3 months, whatever the time will be. But deep in that space, it says, it is proper to grieve.
Yes.
And you need to give yourself time to grieve. We don't expect you to do certain things because you're grieving. And I find that in a certain way as an offer that the community gives to you. And as I say to you, we are not going to rush you. We are not going to judge you. We're not going to impose on you. As you struggle. Now, obviously, there are going to be excesses. There are people who abuse that, who see that as a way of dominating. But the point I'm trying to get to is underneath that, there's this basic thing that says, you know what? You have a right to be on your own.
Yes.
You have a right not to wanting to do this.
To want to speak.
Exactly. So be that.
Yes.
Be that. Now, both in the length, in terms of cutting it short, but also in the length of forcing you out, there might be a problem. What do I mean by that? When we say it must be 6 months, we run the risk then of the person who's able to go to 2 months. That person is still forced.
Or someone who needs more than 6 months.
Yeah, somebody who needs more than 6 months, the other part of it. And there's no way of regulating that because you do need to have a general pattern.
Yes.
But the point I'm trying to get to is that in my reflection of all that is, at that level, there is this kind of sense of, it is proper to grieve. Nobody who's lost somebody is expected to come back tomorrow and be jolly.
Of course.
And for me, that's a critique I have for some of us in the faith. Because we want to treat pain, loss, grief as an irritant. As something that we just need to find a way to deal with it, and therefore we just find a way to get rid of this thing. And so for me, that's the gift that it brings.
And like you said, Reverend Molo, that part of grieving comes with navigating feelings of there could have been things that were not said that were supposed to be said, or they were said in a wrong way, or there could have been things that were not done that were supposed to, and people then pull that and becomes part of their grief, and they struggle. There's a sense of their feeling. They're trying to navigate their feelings of guilt and of regret.
I normally bring things to myself, Lord. I'm just going to bring a very simple thing. Imagine this. I'm angry with you because you didn't move that cup of tea.
Okay.
And that cup of tea fell on me. And I didn't burn, but there was some hotness. And I'm angry with you because I said to you, move that cup. And you did not move that cup. And then I don't speak for you for the night because I'm angry with you. And then I wake up in the morning, you are gone.
You didn't wake up.
What do you think I'm going to feel? I'm going to feel crap. I'm going to say to myself, did I really have to be angry?
Was it necessary? I watched a movie actually. This woman said the last words that she said to her son was when they were going for his competition of swimming, and he died while he was swimming. He went too hard by the wall. And then she says, my last words were, wait, make sure you take out the dustbin when you get back home. Not even, I wish you well, all the best. So she was feeling.
That's my
so
point
bad.
exactly. That's my point exactly. That because then you have to reinterpret your life experience in the context of loss.
Sure.
So there's no way in which you're going to feel great about that. You are going to beat yourself up because you say to yourself, it's just a small little thing. It was just a cup, for goodness sake. But when it happens, you're not planning for death. And then how then do you go back then and reconnect with that moment and other moments of your life journey? So I understand fully. People are angry. People, just imagine this. Just imagine this thing. This father was absent in my life. I have not told him yet how I feel, because the next time I meet him, he's sick.
And you can be ignorant.
And I need to take care of him.
Yeah.
But deep in my soul, I'm struggling with
There's
his
a
absence.
loss.
And he passes on. I have not poured my soul to him. Or you pour your soul, which is the worst, you pour your soul.
And then he dies. You think you killed him.
So all those things are human feelings that go into that process. As I said before, grief is not only a mourning of a physical loss. It is the mourning of the history and the journey shared. That's what grief is. You don't grieve bones. You don't grieve muscles. You grieve the journey.
Exactly.
I've walked with this person,
The
whatever the
memories,
nature,
the bond.
and the love that comes from
the
that.
love.
And we need to honor that and accept that as part of the real struggle of journeying as the person goes through that. So feelings of guilt, feelings of emptiness, all kind of things. We honor them as people go through them and say to them, there is something much more than those feelings that we can get. And sometimes, and this is where people sometimes we struggle. Sometimes the beauty of the person can be given to us in a glimpse rather than in a long time. And therefore the glimpse becomes almost their perfect self in the context of his imperfection. And how do you hold on to that? And deal with the fact that whatever choices they might have had in their life, I can connect with the best of himself and understand the worst of himself as struggles that he had to go through. And how then do I mourn that loss? How do I mourn the emptiness? How do I engage the emptiness? Come back to the point that you come in. I don't want to take your time, but who is God? Who is God? And in my sense, as John says, God is love. And if God is love, he God is love. The deepest more pain in grief is the loss of love. So when we say God is near, we are saying love is near.
It's there, very present.
And therefore, in the sense of personification of God, there must also be a need to reflect the depth of who God is. So that people know that in this moment of loss, I'm still loved by the source of all things, which is love. And that allows you then to absorb the pain. Because if you know you are loved, there's no pain too much not to bear. Because you know you are loved.
You are loved either way.
And that's what we give and offer and say, God is near in this moment of grief. We are saying to you, love is near. And if we say love is near, sometimes this love doesn't show itself. Struggle with it. Call it out. Hold on to it. Even if it doesn't make sense, hold on to it. Fall without letting go. Stumble without letting go. Be dragged without letting go. Because that is the basis of the rebuilding of your happiness, of the rebuilding of the connection with the beauty of the person, the beauty of life. And ultimately, what is life if it is not love?
Thank you so much, Reverend Molo. Any questions, any comments from our audience? Thank you. Reverend Molo, in closing, what steps, therefore, can you think of, can you give to people who are grieving, who are undergoing this unbearable journey, that can help them, that they can grieve and at the same time still move forward, and at the same time pull themselves out? Are there tangible steps that one can offer?
If you remember, we did give some steps last time.
Yes.
Of being patient with yourself, of allowing yourself to go through this. So I'm not going to go back to that.
Okay.
The people can go and do that. There are two things I'm going to say here. Firstly, to add on whatever said last time, do not run away from telling the story of your journey with that person. There's healing power in telling the story.
And actually, you will find that at some stage you tell the story without crying.
Yes.
You are laughing.
I'm going to start saying this. You tell the story, you cry, but feel healed.
Yes.
So the crying
Still
is part of that process that somebody once said, it is crying is the visible sign of the water that comes out, because ultimately crying is water, the tears are water, that reflects the deep sense of the struggle within the soul for healing. And therefore, as the water comes out, part of your own souls are being knit together. Those parts that felt the pain harder are knitting together. So the tears are not a sign of defeat. They're a sign of struggle that is inside and allow you to do that. So I would say for people to please then remember the most powerful thing of being human is the ability to reconnect with the story of life. We're not animals who forget. We retell the story, because in the telling of the story, that's where this new thing comes in, the new will come. The other thing I just want to say is, simply, I've made this noise about it throughout today, is really, 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 Ruth, when I said this, and if I said it, forgive me. The journey to Bethlehem, passes through Herod's house. I want to repeat that. journey to Bethlehem passes through Herod's house. Hey, how does it pass to Herod's house? Remember those 3 wise men?
Please remind
The
me.
men from the east who were told that there's a son who's going to be born in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And what were they told? They were told to follow the star.
Yes.
And where did the star
What
take
did we
them?
call them? Ghana, there's a word, there's a term. Yes.
Where did the star take them? To the house of Herod. And the star guided them. And when it came to the house of Herod, it disappeared. Sometimes, life takes us to those places where the star disappears. And we're in the midst of this great pain and loss.
Moments of grieving, we must always remember that God's love is timeless. And it's opportunities like this where we get to be nearer, or where God is nearer to us, where our hope offers us a glimpse of light, a glimpse of faith. And God's love that is timeless holds us and carries us through our sorrow, through our difficulties, and does not let go of us. So may we be blessed, may we be kept, and see you again in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you.